He wants to come out of that cave into the light. It's all a picture of, Masonry says that you're coming out of darkness into the light. Masonry says that you go through the 7 layers. Masonry says you climb the ladder with 7 rungs. The New Age movement, Newage, because it rhymes with sewage, says you have to have the serpent climb up the 7 chakras. Well, in the Mithraic rites, which is where the ladder came from and all this stuff, the idea is that Mithras is bound up in the pit and he needs to be released. The 12th Imam is down there too, needs to be released. And in order to be released, see, here's another part of it. Persephone, or Mystery Babylon the Great, actually goes down into the pit through the 7 gates to hell in order to help bring him up out through the 7 gates of hell. Mystery Babylon, Diana, remember her? The whole world worships her. Her doctrines creeping into, she's the one bringing the doctrine of the 7 nations, the land of Canaan, into the church. So now the church people are going along with the idea, hey, let's go down to through the 7 gates of hell so we can release Mithras down there. The god with 7 heads on him. This is what now here's what I want to show you. This Mithras character is seen in Revelation 9:11, and they had a king over them. Remember Mithras and his crown of 7 rays. They had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, the abyss, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath this name Apollyon. Do you know that the phrase bottomless pit is found exactly 7 times in your King James Bible? Now, here's where we're going to put some things together here. Back in Deuteronomy chapter 7, and I had mentioned this before, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations, greater and mightier than thou. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them. Stop right here. These were gods in these lands. Their kings were half God, half human. God had already made a covenant with Israel. It was called the Old Testament. And God knew that if the Israelites made a covenant with these gods, that would nullify and break the contract that God had with the God wanted to bring the Israelites into the Promised Land and give them eternal life. But he said, if you go worship and go whoring after their gods in the 7 nations, you're going to break my contract. This is why he said, make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. And then he said, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. As it was in the days of Noah. What was going on in the days of Noah? Marriages. What do we see in Genesis chapter 6? Well, let me show you this symbol first. The symbol of the square and the compass in Freemasonry represents the gods mating with the human women. That's what you see. That's what God warned against in Deuteronomy 7 with the 7 nations. God said, don't marry their people. Why? Because they're hybrids. They're not really human. They have beast DNA in them. They have fallen angel, devil, evil angel DNA in them. God said, don't marry their people. And so in the religion of Freemasonry, and it is a religion, the religion of Freemasonry, the square and the compass, we've talked about this 100 times before. Notice the square pointing up and the compass pointing down, as above, so below. It's just like the 10 spheres in the Kabbalah. You have some up here and some down here, and they're fused together. And I want you to notice when you mix the square and the compass together, you do exactly what God said don't do. Notice that we have, and let me just do this. The square has 1, 2, 3 points to it. The compass has 1, 2, 3 points to it. That's 6. And then you have a 7th thing in the middle. What is that? It's the letter G. Take a look at it. What does that symbol of the letter G represent? It's actually very simple. A, B, you want me to sing it? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this because teachers think I'm making a gun. It's the number 7. That's what that is. The letter G is the number 7. It represents the 7 nations, the 7 chakras, the 7 levels, the 7 layers, the 7 gates of hell, the 7 heavens, the 7 nations that God didn't want them to marry. That's what that represents. It is the idea of, we see it in Genesis chapter 6. It came to pass when the men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born unto them that the sons of God, that's the compass, saw the daughters of men, that's the square, that they were fair, and they took them wives. They married them, of all which they chose. If you look in verse 4, there were giants in the earth when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. Giants, letter G, the number 7. It's all that's what all this represents with the square and compass and the letter G. And God said, don't do that. And He said, as it was in the days of Noah, they were marrying and giving in marriage. What was the marriages going on in the days of Noah? The sons of God and the daughters of men. Now, there is in just about every false religion, there is this concept of what's called the sacred marriage. It is a mockery. Just like everything we're dealing with on the number 7 in the occult realm is a mockery of God's version of it. The 7 spirits of God, the 7 abominations of the Antichrist, 7 heads and so on. You have Christ and His bride coming together one of these days. Can't wait for that. It's going to be such a glorious thing. In the occult realm, you have a version of that called Hieros Gamos, which basically means sacred uniting or sacred marriage. In other words, you could ask Ed Young what this is all about. Ritualism that's based upon the joining together of a male and a female or 2 significant others. Doesn't really matter. But I guess it would in this case, the male and the female, because they're opposite sons of God, daughters of men. That's what Hieros Gamos represents, and that's what Ed Young had his whole church doing for 7 days. Ritualistic fornication for 7 days so they could have a closer, more intimate walk with God. Are you kidding me? Had a friend of our ministry out in California said, Pastor Mike, you got to see this video. There's a group called Black Eyed Peas. They did a song with a video called Meet You Halfway. It was basically the Hieros Gamos. You have the woman who she's always laying on the ground. She's the earth. She's Gaia, Mother Nature. She is the human realm, this daughters of men. And then you have the other singer of the group who is, oh, look at that planet in the background. What is that? That is Saturn, the 7th planet. And he is of the celestial realm. She is of the earthly realm. And they both enter into this magical pyramid thing, and they're going to meet each other halfway. That's the square and the compass. That's Hieros Gamos. That's exactly what that idea is all about. It's in the Mormon church. It's called sacred marriage. Temple marriage rituals, where they go into the temple, the Hieros Gamos takes place, the male and the female, the sons of God and the daughters of men, and even in their holy underwear, they have the square and the compass on there. That's because Joseph Smith was a Freemason and stole most of the ideas of the rituals of the Mormon church from the Masonic Lodge. That's where he got it from. You have in the Catholic Church the 7 sacraments. 7, stop and get this now. 7 rituals that are performed that turn you into a god. That's what sacraments is. 7 works that must be performed. You have the ritual or the sacrament of sprinkling, baptism. The sacrament of the Eucharist. The sacrament of last rites. Last rites must be performed. Because if you only have 6, well, it stinks to be you. You can't go to heaven because you didn't have number 7 put on your dead carcass or your casket. Last rites. It's all about works, salvation. These 7 things, when you do them, make you sacred, make you holy, turn you into a god. It's in the mystery doctrine is in the Roman Catholic Church. One of the 7 sacraments is, if you're Catholic, and you know this, if you're Catholic or used to be Catholic, you've got to get married in the Catholic Church. And at a particular spot in the Catholic Church, It's called the cross point. It's where this part of the church intersects with this part of the church. The Catholic Church makes a big cross, and you have to be standing right in the center of that cross in order for the hieros gamos and the blessing and the real marriage to take place. It's all about ritualistic stuff. It's all about works. God will bless this marriage if it's done this way as part of the 7 works. It's the religion of the 7 nations is what it is. Even Roman Catholicism, they have 7 virtues and 7 deadly sins. 7 and 7. And they are opposites of one another, all in the same body, in the same church. The doctrine of the 7 nations is in full force to this day, moving into a Baptist, Pentecostal, Nazarene, Methodist, non-denominational church near you. It's all moving in. Take a look at this graphic. You'll see exactly what this is about. We've used this before. These are the 2 pillars of the temple, Jachin and Boaz. The secrets of Freemasonry are in Jachin and Boaz, is what they're saying. Jachin represents the masculine, Boaz represents the feminine, and notice that they are joined together. You have the sun and the moon, and you have the other 5 planets in these. So you have the 7 planets that link the 2 pillars together, that bring them together, pater and mater, in other words, father and mother. And they're also joined by 7 lower things, or the 7 gates of hell, the infernius, which is the realm of hell, the bottomless pit. And those 7 up above must join with the 7 down below. In other words, the 7 virtues must be balanced by the 7 deadly sins in Roman Catholicism as part of the 7 sacrament system, works, salvation. But basically all of this is to produce what's in the middle there, the God-man. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, is what this is all about. Now let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 7. Because all of this occult number 7, and people, and I can understand wanting to stay away from symbols and wanting to stay away from this and wanting to stay away from that. Something that we need to understand. Something that I like to teach people in exposing the devil and exposing the power of the devil and his religion and his works and how they're creeping in and everything like that. Something I like to make sure people understand is that God is always going to win the battle. God is always going to defeat these people. Go look at Revelation chapter 12. When Michael and his angels fight against the dragon, 7 heads, and his angels, Michael and his angels prevail. God wins. And Satan and his angels are cast down to the earth, and eventually they're cast into the lake of fire. So look at what God promised in Deuteronomy chapter 7. He said, "These 7 nations greater and mightier than thou, when the Lord thy God shall," didn't say might, "shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt," he didn't say you had to, he didn't say I wanted you to. He said, "Thou shalt." Now stop right here. When God says, "Thou shalt," He's not ordering you to, hoping that you'll do what He asks you to do. It's kind of like, here's my idea of the 10 Commandments. I love the 10 Commandments. Don't get me wrong. But when God says, "Thou shalt not steal," number one, it is a commandment. We're not supposed to steal. But it's like I said about the speed limit sign. "Thou shalt not go faster than 35 miles an hour." That sign doesn't stop people from going faster than 35 miles an hour. It doesn't work. What do I believe? I believe that when God says "thou shalt" or "thou shalt not," it's going to happen. You see, I believe one of these days that this body of sin is going to die off one of these days, or it's going to be transformed in the translation. And I'm going to have a new body. And I'm going to be with Jesus in heaven, with God, worshiping Him forever and ever. Ruling and reigning for 1,000 years is going to be in there too, but then after that we get a new heaven, a new earth.